We don't look just at the main stem of a river, we look at the watershed, from the ridgetops to the river. And most of our aquatic diversity is in the tributaries to the Tennessee River. If you put on a mask and snorkel and get in a tributary to the Tennessee River, this is what you see. You see all of these minnows and darters and suckers just swimming around and having a party under the surface of the water. So here is our log perch. What do you notice about that guy? You can see that he's got tiger stripes, which are pretty cool. And then check out that snout. He's got that really long snout. What they do is they go around the bottom, they see a rock, they think, I wonder if there's any food under that rock. They eat aquatic insects, so they use that nose to flip the rock upside down and then look for mayflies and caddisflies and stoneflies underneath there, and then they eat them. Log perch, there was competition because a lot of other darters were eating the aquatic insects on the rocks and in between the rocks, so they were like, let me try my snout, and flipped over the rock, and look at this, I can get these aquatic insects that other fishes can't. They have that unique form of feeding, flipping that rock over, but they are more habitat generalists. They can be found in 30 feet of water, they can be found in a foot of water. But right outside the Tennessee Aquarium, the Tennessee River, you would find the three-horned wartyback. They filter our water. They bring water in, they take out the fine organic material, and they eat it. They have a really interesting life history. All North American native mussels, they have a little larval form. The eggs hatch in the female, then there's these tiny little larval mussels, they're called glaucidia, and they have to attach and parasitize a fish to transform to a juvenile. If they don't find a fish to stick to their gills or fins and parasitize them, sort of like a tick on you, they die. And the three-horned wartyback, it needs minnows. It has to have minnows. So what the female three-horned wartyback does is it packets its little baby glaucidia into something that looks like a worm. It's round and long and curved and white, and it looks just like a worm. It's called a conglutinate. That's the fancy word for the little packet of larval mussels. And then they release them, they fall to the bottom. So a minnow's swimming around, it says, oh, there's a white worm. It bites that, it breaks the conglutinate, and all those little glaucidia, as it's trying to eat that, they go in its mouth and parasitize its gills. And so they stick on there for 2 or 3 weeks, they transform to a little itty-bitty juvenile three-horned wartyback, and they drop off onto the bottom and start filtering water. So lake sturgeon historically occurred in the Cumberland River, the Tennessee River, and the Coosa River in Georgia of the Mobile Basin. And they all disappeared in the 1970s from overfishing, water pollution, and poor conditions below dams. Now that all three of those things are vastly improved, in 2000 the Tennessee Aquarium and a whole lot of partners started putting fishes back in the Tennessee River, and then 5-6 years later they started putting them back in the Cumberland and Coosa River systems. And to date, we've put about 700,000 lake sturgeon over those 25 years back into those 3 southeastern rivers. They evolve very slowly. They're really hard to do genetic studies on because their genetics barely change at all over millions of years. They also have little pores that have electric detecting organs, and they can feel the electricity put off by the aquatic insects or mussels buried in the sand. Lake sturgeon historically would get 9 feet long and weigh about 300 pounds, but things don't get that big and old as they used to. So now we expect these sturgeon to get 7, maybe 8 feet long, only weigh about 200 pounds or so, you know. A long-lived fish is they don't mature till they get really old. So they evolved that they have a big, huge wand out in front of their face, an electric wand that can tell them where plankton is, because even plankton are those small little crustaceans. Their little legs swimming produce electricity, and they have so many electric detecting organs on the underside of that paddle and the underside of their head that they can actually feel the electricity that plankton puts off. But just like the sturgeon, they've got that leathery skin, and they've lost the plates along the side that sturgeon have. But they're not related to catfish at all. They're very closely related to sturgeon. They are the only freshwater ram ventilator in the world. And you're like, what did you just say, Bernie? Okay, you know that a lot of species of sharks, they have to swim constantly because they don't have the right apparatus over their gills to pump water over their gills. Nurse sharks do. They can sit there and they can pump water over their gills and breathe. But a lot of sharks, they have to force water over their gills to get enough oxygen. Paddlefish, they have modified their head and mouth and gill arches so much to catch plankton, they don't efficiently move water over their gills. So they have to swim. If someone finds out I'm an ichthyologist, a fish scientist, they always come up to me and say, so is it true about the dams and the catfish? And I know what they're going to say, that a diver went down to check for cracks in the dam, and they thought they were standing on the bottom, and the bottom moved, and it was a catfish the size of a Volkswagen. They died of a heart attack. Catfish do not get the size of Volkswagens. Now, some catfish in the world do, but in North America, they don't. 5.5 feet long, 150 pounds, so they get as big as people, but not as big as Volkswagens. Most catfish feed at night, and so they feel and taste around with those barbels and find food and then put it in their mouth. In the front, there's a very sharp, pointy spine in the front of the fin. And on their pectoral fins, the ones that are right here, there's a really sharp spine on the front edge. So when you go to take any catfish off of the hook, those spines, they can actually lock them into place, and that's their defense mechanism. If something's trying to eat them, they've got 3 sharp spines, 2 on their side and 1 on their back. Catfishes, including blue catfishes, they'll find a log or some area where they can hollow out a cavity under a rock or in a log or under a log, and the female will come into that little nest they make. She'll lay the eggs, she'll fertilize the eggs, then he guards the eggs. After the eggs hatch, he guards the little larvae, and that whole month or 2 months that he's guarding that, he doesn't eat. He just sits there and guards those little babies, and when they get big enough, they swim off on their own, then he goes munch on a whole bunch of stuff.